Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids Podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. It means so much to me that you're listening today. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, I just want to say welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids-only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, if you're listening today and you think, man, I know of someone that could really use this encouragement, or you think, I bet their family would love to listen to this podcast, would you share it with them? Maybe send it over through a text or post it on your social media and let people know that you like to listen. That really is such a great way to let someone know that you're thinking about them and also to get the word out about this show. Well, it is just a few days away from Easter Sunday, and I'm so excited. That's one of my favorite holidays at church. I just love all the music and all the celebration and the focus on Jesus' resurrection and all that he's done for us. It's such a great weekend leading up to that as well. And it's one of the most important holidays in the Christian calendar. Another thing I love about Easter, which is not nearly as important as Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, is all the egg-shaped candy that's out right now. All the Easter candy is so much fun. I love that there's jelly beans and Reese's eggs and Cadbury cream-filled eggs and Hershey eggs and M&M eggs and marshmallow eggs and, oh my goodness, so many different kinds of sugary egg-shaped things. But let me tell you a funny story actually about marshmallow eggs. So I don't know if you've ever had one of those. They have like a colorful, hard candy shell, and they have a soft marshmallowy center. And when I was working at a church years ago, someone donated a lot of those, like over 100. And we didn't end up using those for our Easter egg hunt to put into our Easter eggs. So what I did actually was I went to the office of the IT guy that was on our church staff because he was a friend of mine. And while he was away, I hid all of those eggs in his office, in his files, in his lamp, in the pockets of all his coats that he had hanging on his door, lots of places that I hid those eggs. And he found those eggs for months. He came in and found a few of them right away, but it took him a very long time to find all of the eggs. And it was just one of my favorite memories. So Travis, if you're listening, I apologize. Kinda. It was really funny. Anyway, so that's a fun Easter story, I guess. Well, let's get into our conversation today. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Her name is Melissa MacDonald. She is a leader of leaders, a professional speaker, author, and coach. She is considered one of the leading voices in children's ministry today. Her dynamic style of speaking keeps her audience laughing and crying and thinking deeply all at the same time. She travels extensively and loves good ethnic food, and she and her husband are foster parents and now adoptive parents, and they live in Iowa with their son Phoenix and their dog Bogey. I am so excited for you guys to hear this very encouraging conversation with my friend Mel MacDonald. Well, Mel, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Yay! It's about time.
Yes.
It is about time. I've been fangirling for a long time, and then you invited me, and then I couldn't do it for like a year and a half, it feels like. So thank you for hanging in and letting me be a part of it.
I'm not a lot of different personality types, but persistent is one. And so if I decide that this is going to be a good thing, and I'm going to pursue it. So I'm so glad that we were keeping in touch and made it work today. So I'm glad you're here.
Love it.
Would you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name's Melissa MacDonald, or Mel, or Miss Mel. I am a 20 plus year veteran in full-time children's ministry in a variety of different ways. I've been a children's pastor. I've been a elementary counselor overseas as a missionary. I led a denominations children's ministry for 10 years, and now I have my own ministry. So I've done a bunch of different things, but my passion is kids and really advocating for kids as well. I am married to very adorable husband. We just celebrated 6 years of marriage. And then we just 3 weeks ago adopted our son out of foster care. So now I am officially the mom of a 10-year-old. So
Wow.
my life has been crazy and good and exciting, and usually always involves around kids and families of some sort. So I live in Iowa. I have a puppy that's adorable that may join us on the podcast. You never know. And I go right from here to lead an after-school program for at-risk kids. So I have all sorts of things that I do. I love being involved locally, and I love speaking and training and traveling. But I always feel like if you're listening to someone train on something they're not doing, you probably shouldn't listen. So I'm like, no, I'm literally recruiting volunteers. I'm literally doing that.
Yes.
So kind of do a bunch of different things, but love being involved in my local community and then serving the global children's ministry community as well.
That's amazing. I love that. And I would love for your dog to join us. So if it happens.
Yes, Bogey. He often does. So
That's good. I love it.
Very needy.
Yes, they often are, but it's just because they want to be included, right?
Mm-hmm. He wants my lap. That's all.
That's right. That's great. What kind of dog is it?
He's a Shoshan, so a Shih Tzu Bichon Frise mix. He's a teddy bear. He's adorable.
Nice.
So yeah, he's 3 years old, Bogey, and he's kind of an emotional support dog. He can sense when people are upset.
Aww.
So he's on my lap a lot. And then he also, with my foster son, now adopted son, has radar for him. So if he's having a hard day, Bogey will be right next to him.
Aww.
So we're really thankful for him.
Yes.
So he's a great dog.
Well, I'm so glad to talk to you today, and this is going to be so fun. But before we get into our conversation, because this is a show for kids, I always ask my guests to tell me a joke. So what do you have for us today?
Okay, so I have a couple jokes. The one I use with kids all the time when I talk about the salvation message, and I always start in the garden, talk about Adam and Eve. And why was Eve called woman was because Adam saw her and was like, whoa, man, she is so good to look at. And so I use that joke a lot. So maybe your podcast listeners have not heard that one. It's kind of like the epitome of a dad joke. So yeah, that always gets a laugh with kids. So, whoa, man.
I love it. I love it. I like that that's where the name woman came from. That's good.
Yes, I'm sure that's a historical fact.
Right.
But I'll save my other joke for the next time I'm on the podcast because I fully intend to come back.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Besties.
Okay, good. Yes. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to hear a little bit about your foster care journey. How did you guys start getting into foster care? And can you explain what that is for some of our families and kids that are listening might not be aware?
Okay, so foster care is something that people can do to give kids a home who don't have a safe home to be in. And so oftentimes we have kids that are in homes that aren't safe, whether mom and dad aren't financially able to take care of them or emotionally able or whatever. Or the state has come in and said this is just not a safe home because mom and dad are making poor choices or wherever they're living. Oftentimes there's not a mom and a dad. And so what happens is those kids are taken out of their home and they need a safe place to be while mom and dad or mom or dad or grandma or whoever it is kind of works on themselves. And so my husband is from Guatemala and worked with orphans his whole life. And so when I met him and we even talked about it, we were both really passionate about the idea of helping kids who need a safe place to be, have a safe place. And so we decided to pursue foster care. We kind of started and then stopped because at the time when we first started, I was traveling about 200 days a year speaking and for my work, and that I was like, it's not great foster parenting if you're never home. So then I transitioned out of that job and we began to pursue it more. So we got a call about 2.5 years ago about a 7-year-old boy. Would you be interested in taking him? And it went against the odds of everything we were told. Everybody said, oh, you'll get a sibling set. So you'll get, a brother and a sister or 3 brothers or 7. And we were told too, we would get a younger one, look for a baby. We had a crib and all of that. And then we got a call about the 7-year-old boy. And they called us because he loved to go to church. And so they wanted to put him in a home where he could go to church. And so we prayed about it. We had said no to a number of different scenarios that weren't a good fit for our family. And this little guy felt like the right fit. So he had a unique situation and actually was flown to us from a different state because his mom had been arrested in a different state, but he was from the state of Iowa where we lived. And so we picked him up at the airport and met him for the first time. And kind of fell in love instantly, but always knew like the goal of foster care is always to reunify the child with their family when at all possible. And unfortunately for Phoenix, my son, it was not possible. It was not safe. And so it's been a long journey of just keeping him safe and helping him heal and all the things. And now he is ours. So we are still open for foster care. We do respite care, which is when other foster parents need a break, and we'll take some of their kids. So we had 3 kids here a few weeks ago who only spoke Spanish, which was great because my husband is bilingual. And so we just all tried to speak Spanish. My husband was the best at it. And so we love opening our home to kids, especially who need a safe place to be. So it's really a honor, but it's hard too. And it's interesting at times.
Yeah. But I love that you guys are doing that and bathing it in prayer, every time you make a decision, just to pray through what is the best fit and allow God to work out all those details. So that is beautiful that's how Phoenix came into your family. I love that story. And I love seeing the pictures. You guys go check out her social media and see the pictures of Phoenix and the adoption ceremony. And it was really cool. It was so beautiful. Yeah. So I love that. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book. You just wrote a book called Discipling World Changers. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
Yeah, so that book has been forged in the fire because I actually wrote the first draft about 7-8 years ago almost, following my first book that had come out. It was called Missing, and never, ever in my life intended to be an author, but just God kept saying like, hey, I want you to write this. I want you to do this. And so wrote that. Then I met my husband. We fell in love. And then I was like in a love bubble and couldn't function and couldn't publish the book. And so actually the book was headed to be published like in 2020, and it was headed to the table at March 2020 for their board meeting of a publisher, and it got lost and never heard from again. And so I just kind of waited and was like, Lord, if this is your book, you will bring it to fruition. I'm not going to push it. I didn't have time to push it that hard. And so, and that's one of the things I always remind myself, like, if God's given you a dream, it's up to him to bring it to fruition. It doesn't have to happen from me pushing. And so that the journey of being patient. So anyways, then a publisher and I connected and I said, I have this book, and they're like, well, send it over. And then they liked it. So Discipling World Changers, kind of answering the question, like, what if we raise up a generation that changes the world instead of the world changing them? Born from frustration on my end of watching kids grow up in the church or in a Christian home and then walk away from church and walk away from God. And could we do it differently? And I think we could. And it's not a massive shift. It's a lot of little shifts. And so I was like, well, I've now 20 plus years in ministry, have tested and tried all of these things, and it works. I mean, it's not perfect and I'm not God, but there's some really simple things you can do to really disciple the kids that you're serving or the kids that you're raising or the kids that you're in contact with in a way that keeps them walking with Jesus for the long haul.
That's great. Can you define that a little bit? What is a world changer? What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I think kids are naturally world changers, because what's great about kids is you guys that are listening, you guys don't necessarily, you don't obey the rules because you're like, well, I'm going to try it anyways. Now, for the parents, I'm sorry, that can be really frustrating at times. But for kids, what we love about you is even when someone hurts you, you're still kind to them. Even when the situation looks scary, you can be brave. Like, you guys are just better at that stuff than adults. So kids are already doing that. And my idea is like, what if we actually join with what God's doing in kids instead of telling kids what God's doing in them? And so a world changer is not somebody who goes out and yells at the world. It's somebody who lives the way that God designed them to live and loves people the way that he designed them to love people. Like, love the people where you're at, serve the people where you're at, and that changes the world. So it's more of a ripple effect world changer. It's not so much a one big boom and everything's changed. But what if we showed kindness to the people that don't deserve the kindness? And what would that look like? So it's those ripple effects that I believe long-term change the world.
Yeah. And I love this idea of starting now with kids. And I'm actually writing a book about something very similar, about how we need to start now with kids and not wait until they get to be an adult to start teaching them how to function in the church and function in the world as a believer. We need to train them now. I don't know who said this first, but children are not the future of the church. They're the church right now. And so we really need to be pouring into them. So I love that you've written this book. Can you talk a little bit about discipleship for kids? Like, what does that look like, and how do kids get discipled?
I think kids get discipled the way adults do. For me, it's life on life. It's about living life together. And we would like, as adult Christian world, we would love it to be this formulaic thing. Like, okay, you do this, this, and this, and then this is the outcome. Discipleship is messy. Discipleship is, we do life together. And actually, if you look at Jesus and the way that he lived on the earth, he discipled. And he didn't go to his manual. He just lived his life in front of his people. And so that's how we do it. And the beautiful thing about that is that we aren't Jesus. And so we are going to screw up. Right. We are going to make mistakes.
Yes.
And all the parents say amen. Like, we will. And then we go, oh. But here's what's really cool. And I always go back to 2 Corinthians 4, where it says that we're like fragile clay jars. And it proves that our great power is not from ourselves, but from God. And so the beautiful thing about when we mess up is it actually is discipling the people around us to understand we aren't making disciples out of ourselves. Like, we just serve a God who can make beauty out of a fragile clay jar. And I love that picture. I love that reminder, because I mess up all the time. And I love that idea that actually in my mess ups, we serve a God who out of chaos brings order and brings beauty. And so when we're discipling, we are just living out in front of them. And for me, so often the discipling is just even being willing to admit when I'm wrong, or being willing to admit, like, I overstepped there, or I am famous for trying to be funny and then being mean. And so I have to often like pull it back and be like, I'm really sorry. That was unkind. Now, my parents' generation, you don't do that. You don't apologize. You don't, And I'm like, I don't think that actually worked. I don't think that was really helpful. So admitting when I'm doing wrong, but also admitting, like, here's what God's teaching me. I always encourage adults, don't tell what God's taught you as a child. Tell what God's teaching you right now, because the kids that we're discipling right now need to know that we serve a fresh Savior at work in our lives. We know he is, but I don't know why we feel like we have to dumb down or go back to when we were 8 years old to remember things. I think sometimes we're like, God's teaching me patience, and here's what that looks like. So discipleship is doing life together. And then it's little things like, I have a rule when I am with kids, like if they want someone to pray with them, I'll pray with them. But one of my rules is then they pray as well. And it's just a little tweak, because I'm so good at praying for kids and with kids. But I realize, like, if kids feel like they need to come to me to approach God, I'm messing that up. And I don't even have this rule written. Actually, I wrote it in the book, but it's not like I have a rule list. It's just in my head is, sure, I'll pray for you, and then I want you to pray about it as well. And for many kids, it's the first time they've ever prayed for anything that didn't have to do with their meal. And so that is discipleship. That's understanding you can talk to God anytime about anything. So it's messy, and it's not in a linear pattern, and that can be really hard for adults. But actually, I've never met a kid who's in a linear pattern. So discipleship being messy and chaotic is actually a really good way to approach it with kids.
Absolutely. And I also believe, and I'm sure you do too, that if parents feel like, okay, I don't feel like I've been doing anything related to spirituality with my kids ever, So I guess it's too late. But
No.
that's not true. You can start if your kids are 10, if your kids are 4, whatever their age group is, you can start showing them your relationship with God, like you're just saying, and they can follow after what you're doing. So talk to those parents right now that are thinking like, okay, how do I get started with this? How do I start having these conversations? Because sometimes I think it feels a little scary. So let's help everybody feel a little less anxiety about discipling our kids.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, discipling is a really big word, and it often gets misspelled as disciplining. So just, like we're not talking about disciplining, and discipleship's a big word. So let's bring it down to just like a normal level, like that idea of doing life with your kids. Even if you think I've not been doing anything spiritual, you have been. Maybe you haven't been intentionally doing it, but you have been. And if you are, let's just say you're just a good person, that actually, the way God has wired a kid's brain is they begin to understand that there's a good God. Like that's what's so cool. Because we were created by God for him, he's constantly drawing us to him. So even if you're like, I don't even pray with my kids, my guess is you probably aren't cussing at your neighbor all the time. And that's a great thing. And that is like helping them understand, even down to, let's say there's somebody hungry outside the grocery store and you give them some food that is beautiful. And you might go, well, I just did that because I felt like I should be kind. And I would say that's wonderful. And your kids understanding kindness. And at the heart of all of that is who Jesus is. So, but a great place to start, and this is what I suggest often, is don't overwhelm it. Like, don't just sit down and be like, today I'm going to be a spiritual parent, because that's not going to work. And your kids, depending on their age, are going to laugh at you, mock you, and ignore you. So one of the things we do at our house is just when we sit down for a meal together, and this doesn't happen every day, but we'll just talk about our day. Like, hey, what made you laugh today? What was hard today? What was good? And then we always do where did you notice God around you today? And it's the most simple thing. And kids are so up for it. We adults are the ones who get awkward and weird, but kids are here for it. They're like, oh, here, that simple thing. And the biggest thing is making sure you share as well. This isn't just I'm talking at my kids. This is me entering into the conversation. First of all, it makes you think, and it makes you more aware of your day. Second of all, you're entering that conversation like, okay, let's talk about it. So simple things. The other thing I would say is I meet way too many kids who think their parents don't know Jesus. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because they've never told me how they started a relationship with Jesus. And I'm like, oh, so don't assume. Even those of you that are like, we're really spiritual with our kids, we're really intentional. That's great. Have you told them how you started a relationship with Jesus? If not, make popcorn and do story night. And yours might be really short. Mine's really short. But your kids need to know that you did have a moment where you started a relationship with Jesus, because that opens the door for more. So I would say start with just being a little more vulnerable, a little more open, and little things, little baby steps. Like, don't go, I'm going to do this every day. Go, I'm going to try this once this week or once this month, and then see what happens as a result of that. You'll be surprised by how your kids meet you there. And they're not meeting you there. They're already there. They've been waiting for you to come and meet them there. So
that's good.
Go for it.
Yeah, I love that. I think most of our faith conversations with my family happens in the car, because we're in the car all the time, driving to school, driving to practices, driving to church, all those different things. And so, just having those conversations, just really simple conversations. Tell me what you learned about in Sunday school today as we're driving home from church, like those things. And then I always love, we always keep Christian radio on in the car or some kind of worship playlist or something. And so I'll say, do you guys know what this song means? Do you know what the lyrics mean when they say that? And they say no. And so I get to explain, or maybe they do know and they get to tell me what they're learning. And so I think that's cool when we can just have those simple conversations. So I love those ideas. That's great. Okay, so this episode is coming out right before Easter Sunday and Good Friday and all the great things that it's like the epitome of the Christian faith holiday, because we're so excited because Jesus is risen. But I always like to ask my guests this question when we're coming up on Good Friday. What makes Good Friday good? Why do we call it that? Why do we call Good Friday good?
Well, it didn't start out good. It started out really sad and really hard. But oftentimes we look at things that are good later and can see that they are good. In the moment, it doesn't always feel good. And one of the things we have to do as humans is hold on and trust that God's doing something, even if we don't like where we're at in the moment. And so I can't imagine the actual original Good Friday, everyone was excited. They weren't. They were
Right.
in deep mourning because Jesus died. So we have this great word called hindsight where we can look back and go, oh, I get it. So we celebrate because we can look back and see that what happens in 3 days is Jesus rose again. But if Jesus hadn't risen again, it would still be good because he took the punishment for our sins. Now he conquered it when he rose again, but it's Good Friday because we know what happens. And so oftentimes when we have a Good Friday service, it's more somber or a little more quiet because we're trying to really reflect on the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. And I try to be very aware of the fact that Jesus chose me, that he chose you, that he did that for me, that when he died, he was thinking of me. It wasn't just a blanket, all the people of the world and those that would come. It was my name was there. And that is really good and really hard. So oftentimes in life, we can hold really hard and really good, and it's kind of all in the same basket. And that's hard for a lot of brains. It's hard for my brain. It's hard for a lot of kid brains too, because we're like, it's either good or bad, but actually things can be good and hard at the same time. And that I think is Good Friday. It's hard, good, beautiful. And also we know what's coming is that the story gets better. So
That's right.
It's kind of that part in the movie or the book where you're like, oh, I hope this gets better. It does. It gets better. It gets really good. And so we know it. So we get to reflect on that on Good Friday. So I think that's why it's good.
That's so true. It's like we get to read the last chapter of a book to know what happens. We know what happens, so we know it's good. But it is, like you said, good to reflect on the sacrifice that Jesus made for us and how important that is to our salvation and to the salvation of others around us. And so that's why we want to share about that and tell other people. So thank you for sharing that. Another important question I have for you, what is your favorite kind of Easter candy?
Oh, Reese's eggs, hands down.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Anything, like whether they're the football, the Christmas tree, the heart, like I'm here for the peanut butter, like that. I'm here for that. So yeah, Reese's eggs. I used to live in Austria. I was a missionary there, and you don't get those over there. And that would be, I didn't crave a lot of American food, but Reese's eggs or trees or hearts or whatever. I was like, I could use some of the sad thing is when the time somebody would bring them, like put them in their suitcase and come to visit, they weren't as good. So
yeah,
those are good. Those I like. And that's something my husband will often show he loves me is he'll buy me like a Reese's egg. So
that's the sign of true love.
It is. And then I'm like, I'm not sharing. These are mine. And I hide them in my special hiding spot that all parents have a special hiding spot where we keep the good stuff from you. And that's our prerogative as a parent. And you can do that when you are a parent. That's what my mom always used to say.
You're telling
you can do that when you're a parent.
That's right. You're telling all the parents' secrets right now. We do. We all parents have a secret hiding place for the really good stuff. My favorite is the mini Cadbury eggs. So it's not the big ones that have the cream fill. It's that really good chocolate with the hard shell.
And the crunch.
Yes, the crunch. And then I'll get like a bag of those, and like they come out in February, and I'm like, it's mini egg season. That's and Jesus, but it's also mini eggs. So do
you suck on them or do you crunch them? Like what's the joy there?
I do like the bite, like the crunch, but then I also like to savor it. So I don't eat like 12 at a time. I'll have like 2 or 3, and it's just like, and then it goes back in my hiding spot.
Person. Good for you. I'm like, I'll have 2 or 3 bags, and then they go back.
But that's like every 5 minutes or so sometimes, like I'm just going to get 2.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, I need 2 more.
Yes. The key is to put them where you have to walk to so that you're getting exercise as you're going to get the candy.
Yes.
I find that works really well for me. It's like a reward. You walked 8 steps. Good job. Have some candy.
That's right. And I also remembered where I hid them, so I get bonus points for that.
That's impressive because also as we get older, our brains forget, and it's the kids that have done it to us. Our brains are just dying. And so where did I leave that? I'm still trying to find a Christmas present I bought for Phoenix that I don't know where it is. I put it in a safe spot, and I thought I'd looked in every safe spot, and it's not there. So it's going to show up and be an Easter present, midsummer present. I don't know, whenever it shows up.
That's great. Well, this has been so good, Mel. I've loved talking with you today, and I'm so thankful for your book and all the things that you're doing to help disciple world changers. So I'm really excited for this book and for our readers to get a hold of it. Where can they find your book?
It's on Amazon, so you can go get on Zamazon. Don't go to Zamazon. Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's in all the bookseller retailers. It's linked on my profile and all my social media too. So I'd love to have you get it. I'd love to hear what you think. And I hope it's just really helpful. It's written specifically for parents and children's ministry leaders. So it's a niche audience as well, but it's pretty special, I think.
I love that. That's great. You guys definitely go check out her book. Before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So what memory do you want to share with us today?
I love bugs. And when I was a kid, I still love bugs today. It depends. If there's a swarm of bugs, no. But I think bugs are fascinating. And so when I was a kid on my swing set, I set up a bug clinic, and the neighborhood kids would bring me their bugs to heal. And I was not great. I did not have a good success rate, but I did bring a fly back to life once. And that was pretty renowned in the neighborhood. And so I had a bug clinic, and you got to be careful because you do CPR on a bug. If you blow too hard, you'll never see the bug again. So that's a hint for anybody. And don't put your lips on it, just a little puff of air. So yeah, I was a unique child, but I loved bugs and still do. I still fight. Like, I'll be outside looking at the bugs, unless they're biting me, and then I'm done. And then I spray them because I'm like, no, you don't get to take from me. That's not okay. So yeah, bugs. There you go. There's my memory and insight into the weirdness that is Miss Mel over here.
I love that. I love that you had a bug clinic. It wasn't just collecting the bugs, you were trying to save their life.
Yes, I've always been very purposeful, even as a child. Like, I'm not just playing, I'm healing as well.
Good for you. That's amazing. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was so fun.
Thanks for having me.
That was so good. I love talking with her. It was so fun. I love her story of adoption and foster care. I think that's so interesting and something that so many families need to learn more about. It's a great ministry and a great way for our families to get involved in our communities by caring for those children that need that help. I love when Melissa said, if God has given you a dream, then it is up to him to bring it to fruition. That means he's going to make things happen on his timetable. And that is such good encouragement to remember that we don't have to push things forward ourselves. We can let God take those things and do what he wants with it. She also talked about how we are jars of clay, just like the verse says in 2 Corinthians 4, and that our great power is not from ourselves, but from God. God can bring beauty from our mess ups and our imperfection. And so the best kind of discipleship is when we live out our faith, as messy as it might be, and we do life together. That's where real discipleship can take place. She also said that parents don't need to teach your kids what you learned as a kid as much as you need to teach them what God is showing you right now. We serve a fresh Savior, and God's word still applies to today. And so I hope that as you share with your kids what you're learning and what God's teaching in your life, it will make a big impact. I hope you guys will definitely check out her book, Discipling World Changers. And it raises a good question. What if we raise up a generation that changes the world instead of the world changing this generation? So if you work with kids or if you have kids and you're excited about changing the world by discipling your kids, then I hope you will check out her book. You can find it wherever books are sold, or you can head over to her website, melissajmacdonald.com. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is my friend Tucker.
How did the preacher get rid of insects? Let us spray.
Let us spray. I love that one, Tucker. That was great. Well, hey, if you would like to be like Tucker and share your favorite joke or maybe an encouraging quote that you like or a song or your favorite Bible verse, just head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Kids Only. You can record it right there. It's really easy to do. Or you can record it on your phone and send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. And I would love for you to follow me there and check out all the exciting things I have going on and lots of information about our guests. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a few ways you can do that. First, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast on your podcast app and leave a rating and a review. That's really so encouraging. It's so exciting to get those, to read those and hear what you think about the show. And it really does help more people find out about the show when you leave a rating and a review. You can also share this episode with friends and family, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, or you can go by my website and click the link at the top that says support. And anytime you think about it, I always appreciate your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and an amazing Easter weekend as we celebrate the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus and what that means to our faith and our families. And I hope you are able to celebrate with your church family and to take some time this week to really focus on what the gospel means to you and what Jesus has done for you in your life, and share that with your kids. I think that's going to be such an important thing for you to make time for, especially this week. Well, in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Happy Easter! Jesus is risen!
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.